Hey guys, we were so close at the state capitol that we decided to take the little less than a mile route to get to Alexander Ramsey's house as well. You can see the sign behind me, and that gives some more information, and I'll give you more information as well. Now, originally, this house wasn't here. There was a different house here that was built in 1850. When Alexander Ramsey and his wife Anne first moved to Minnesota, they actually stayed with Henry Sibley and his wife before their first house was built, where this house currently stands as well. Like I said, in 1850, their first house stood on this same property. It was later moved across the street, and this house was started in 1868. It is made of native limestone, and it has 15 rooms inside of it. Now, Alexander Ramsey was our first territorial governor in 1849. He was appointed by Zachary Taylor, who was president at the time. He also ran to be our first state governor, but remember, he was defeated by his friend Henry Sibley, and the next time after that was when he actually became Minnesota state governor. In 1861, Alexander Ramsey was the first state governor to commit troops to the Civil War. So that's important for our Chapter 8 right now. It's really a grand house. As you can walk up, I'm surprised the gate is actually open. But it's pretty awesome. I mean, look at this front porch. Now, 3 generations of Ramseys lived in this house. In fact, 2 granddaughters lived here until their deaths in the mid-1900s, and then they donated the land and the house and all the furnishings and everything to the Minnesota Historical Society. Now, you might remember also that Alexander Ramsey was the one who was thinking manifest destiny, and that meant that it was the destiny of the United States to own all of the land from the East Coast to the West Coast. And remember that he called the Dakota and the Ojibwe obstacles to fulfilling that destiny. It's really quite a magnificent house. And next to the house, there's a carriage house. That's where the museum tours begin now, if you go to these, or if you would come here later on with your parents. This site is one of those sites on your Minnesota History Pass where you can get in free once these are all open again to visit this house and take a tour. It's really an amazing structure. Now keep in mind again that in 1861, which is the beginning of the Civil War, the president, Abraham Lincoln, knew that he could not win the war without soldiers that would volunteer. So instead of drafting soldiers, or sometimes they called it conscripting, they would ask soldiers to volunteer. And Alexander Ramsey was so confident in the hearts of the Minnesota soldiers that he said, "I volunteer 1,000 men for troops to fight in the Civil War." You can see this carriage house. That would have housed a cow and a horse at that time, and whoever cared for those horses. And this was built according to plans that were found in Alexander Ramsey's papers. Behind me is the house as well, so you can see that. Now, one last thing to kind of wrap up this part about Alexander Ramsey's house is that after the Civil War, or in the middle of the Civil War in 1862, in Chapter 9, we'll talk about this, was the U.S.-Dakota War. And in the U.S.-Dakota War, soldiers were busy fighting and training to fight in the Civil War, so the Dakota thought that that would be the best time to try to gain back their independence from the United States government. And so the war began, and when the war began, Alexander Ramsey appointed his friend Henry Sibley to be in charge of the troops to fight against the Dakota. So the the Minnesota Army to fight against the Dakota. So there were 1,500 soldiers that Henry Sibley was in charge of. The war didn't last very long. It was only about 6 weeks. And Alexander Ramsey, after this time, and Henry Sibley as well, was definitely not thought of as a friend to the Dakota. So that's something we'll explore in Chapter 9. I hope you enjoyed this little diversion, and James J. Hill House is close to here too. Who knows, maybe we'll stop there as well.